Lydia Harper was the trusted school counselor, and her daughter Eliza was the golden girl with a bright future. But behind the locked door of their quiet suburban home, Lydia was hiding a horrifying secret that would shatter a town and leave 3 people dead. Franklin, Tennessee was the kind of town where front porches were decorated with flower pots. Neighbors waved as they passed, and secrets never seemed to last long. But Lydia Harper was different. She had arrived over 2 decades ago after the tragic death of her husband in a car accident, clutching her toddler daughter Eliza and a determination to start over. She chose Maple Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac with wide lawns and freshly painted fences. Over time, she became a trusted figure in the community. Lydia worked as a high school counselor, offering guidance to struggling students and volunteering for school events. Her kind voice and calm demeanor made her a comforting presence, someone who seemed to carry no burden too heavy to bear. To everyone who knew her, Lydia's life was an example of resilience. She raised Eliza on her own, never remarried, and poured herself into both motherhood and work. Eliza flourished under her care, excelling in school and winning awards for writing and debate. Neighbors often saw the 2 of them gardening on weekends or walking their dog in the evenings. Nothing about the Harper home ever seemed unusual. It was the kind of house people passed and thought, they have it all figured out. But things began to change shortly after Eliza left for college. Lydia seemed quieter. Her porch light, once always on, now flickered inconsistently. She stopped attending book club, then church, then everything else. Most people chalked it up to empty nest syndrome or the creeping loneliness that often followed years of being a single parent. When Eliza returned home just 1 year into her studies, rumors swirled. Academic trouble, a failed relationship, maybe even a health issue, but Lydia offered no explanations, and the neighborhood moved on. After Eliza's return, no one saw her, not once. Lydia claimed she was adjusting, needing privacy. Friends respected that at first. Then came the little things, the way Lydia avoided eye contact when asked about her daughter. The fact that she now did all her errands late at night. Deliveries left at her doorstep were taken inside in seconds, as if she were always waiting. Even her appearance began to change. The well-groomed, cheerful woman they knew now wore baggy clothes, moved stiffly, and kept to herself. Some neighbors speculated Eliza had experienced a breakdown, and Lydia was shielding her from judgment. Others assumed Eliza had moved again, and Lydia was simply embarrassed to admit she was alone. Still, none of them imagined that anything sinister was happening behind those drawn curtains. After all, this was Lydia Harper, the woman who once helped raise money for a family whose home had burned down. The idea that something dark was growing in her house felt impossible. But the silence inside those walls was not just grief or worry. It was fear buried beneath years of lies, and it was only a matter of time before it clawed its way into the light. The first disappearance didn't set off alarms. It was a local handyman named Greg Tully, known for his reliability and friendly demeanor. He had a job scheduled on Maple Drive, something minor at one of the homes, but never showed up to his next appointment. His van was found 2 streets over, locked and undisturbed. At first, police treated it as a missing person case, assuming perhaps he had walked off due to personal issues, but nothing in Greg's past suggested instability. He had a wife, 2 kids, and a long history of punctual, honest work. Still, without any signs of foul play, the case grew cold. A few months later, a young woman working for the US Census Bureau vanished. Her last documented house visit was on Maple Drive. Co-workers reported she had been running late that afternoon but never returned to her car. Her clipboard was later found in a storm drain. The timing struck a few officers as odd. 2 disappearances months apart, both near the same street. Still, with no connection between the victims and no physical evidence tying them to a specific house, the cases remained unresolved. Lydia Harper's name never came up. Not yet. The neighborhood remained calm on the surface. But beneath the small-town pleasantries, unease was growing. Whispers spread in grocery aisles and over fences. People began locking their doors during the day. Children were told not to walk alone, yet Lydia Harper continued to live as if nothing had changed. She maintained her yard, made brief late-night runs to the pharmacy or grocery store, and stayed mostly out of sight. No one had seen Eliza in months. If asked, Lydia simply said she was dealing with health problems and appreciated their respect for privacy. The third disappearance shattered any illusion of coincidence. A 17-year-old boy named Nathan Carter had taken a part-time job handing out flyers for a local hardware store. He made his way through several streets without issue. His last assigned route: Maple Drive. A neighbor's home security camera captured a blurry image of him walking past Lydia Harper's mailbox. That was the last known footage of him. He never came home. His bicycle was later found propped against a stop sign 3 blocks away, untouched. This time, the police responded with urgency. The 3 missing persons cases, though months apart, now seemed chillingly connected. Officers went door to door, asking questions. Most residents offered statements without hesitation. Lydia Harper answered calmly when they knocked. She welcomed them in, offered coffee, and expressed concern for the missing boy. Her house was orderly and unremarkable. They noted a faint smell of antiseptic, and the fact that the basement door was padlocked. Lydia claimed it was due to renovations. Without cause to enter it, they left. But Detective Sandra Willis left with a knot in her stomach. Something wasn't right. Lydia had answered every question, but her eyes never matched her words. She was composed but too controlled. The walls were clean but too spotless, and there was one thing no one could ignore. 3 disappearances, all leading back to the quiet house on Maple Drive, where a once beloved counselor lived, behind drawn curtains and tightly locked doors. The turning point came from an unexpected source: a motion-triggered camera perched above a garage 3 houses down from Lydia Harper's home, installed just weeks prior by a tech-savvy resident after the 3rd disappearance. It had captured a brief but telling clip. Nathan Carter, the missing 17-year-old, could be seen walking up Maple Drive with a handful of flyers. He stopped at Lydia's mailbox, placed something inside, and walked toward her front door. The footage ended there. There was no recording of him coming back out. That clip was all the police needed to return to the Harper home with a warrant. This time, they weren't leaving without answers. The second search was more thorough, meticulous. Officers combed every room, every closet, every inch of the house. At first, nothing appeared out of place. Lydia, calm as ever, watched from the couch, hands folded neatly in her lap. She said nothing unless spoken to, never once asking why they were back. Her silence was almost rehearsed. When detectives moved to the basement, they noticed the same padlock reported earlier. Lydia offered the key without resistance. Inside, the space appeared typical at first. Tools on the walls, boxes stacked in corners, a washer and dryer humming quietly. But one of the investigators noticed scuff marks on the concrete near the back wall, uneven wear, as though furniture had been dragged but nothing stood there. The wall itself sounded hollow in one spot, subtly different from the rest. It was a false panel. Behind it was a narrow passage, just a few feet long, ending at a metal door. No handle, only a deadbolt. When they pried it open, what lay beyond made even the seasoned officers freeze. The room was small, windowless, and silent. The walls were padded with worn insulation, the air heavy and stale. In the far corner sat a woman, barely recognizable, frail and wide-eyed. Her hair hung in knots, and her skin was pale from lack of sunlight. It was Eliza Harper. She didn't speak. She simply stared, motionless, as though she had been waiting for this moment for years. Officers gently helped her out, wrapping her in a blanket and rushing her into the daylight. Lydia never moved from the couch. When asked who was in the basement, she only said, "My daughter." No emotion, no urgency, just the facts, spoken like a line from a script. The shockwaves were immediate. The beloved school counselor had been keeping her adult daughter locked away for years. The public wanted to believe there had been some mistake. Perhaps Eliza was ill. Maybe Lydia was protecting her from the world. But the story was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The room Eliza had been held in was soundproofed. There was no light, no plumbing, no means of escape, and based on the state of the walls and floor, it had been used for a long time. What began as a search for a missing teenager had uncovered something far darker. It was no longer just about disappearances. The Harper home had become the epicenter of a chilling truth. One that had been carefully hidden behind false walls, polite smiles, and the illusion of perfection. Once Lydia Harper was taken into custody, the truth unraveled with terrifying clarity. At first, she remained quiet during questioning, answering only when necessary. Her face was unreadable, her tone flat. It wasn't until detectives placed a photo of Eliza in front of her, taken moments after her rescue, that Lydia finally spoke. She admitted she had kept her daughter hidden for over 6 years. What followed was a confession that stunned even the most hardened investigators. Years earlier, during her freshman year at university, Eliza had attended a party off campus. According to Lydia, things spiraled out of control when Eliza got into an argument with another student. There was alcohol, a physical altercation, and a tragic fall. The other girl didn't survive. Terrified and intoxicated, Eliza had fled the scene and returned home in the middle of the night. She confessed everything to her mother, sobbing, certain her life was over. Lydia made a decision in that moment, not to call the police, not to seek legal counsel, but to protect her daughter at any cost. She withdrew Eliza from college the next day under the pretense of a mental breakdown. Then, she cut off all contact between Eliza and the outside world. At first, Eliza lived in the house like normal. But as guilt gnawed away at her and fear of discovery grew, she threatened to turn herself in. Lydia panicked. She believed that prison would destroy her daughter, that no one would understand it, had been an accident. So she took drastic measures. She gradually confined Eliza to the basement, first locking her in at night, then during the day, until eventually she sealed the false walls shut and left her there entirely. For years, Lydia maintained the illusion of normal life. She made excuses for Eliza's absence: illness, travel, online schooling. She paid bills, shopped late to avoid questions, and even decorated their Christmas tree alone to keep up appearances. The routine became her new normal, but over time, cracks began to form. A repairman noticed strange noises from the floor below and never left. A census worker insisted on inspecting the basement and vanished. Then, when a teenager unknowingly knocked on the wrong door, Lydia's secret was at risk again. Each time, she did the unthinkable. She killed to keep the truth hidden. She admitted to disposing of the bodies in a nearby ravine and burning their belongings in her fireplace. Lydia spoke of her actions as if they were painful necessities. To her, everything was justified if it meant Eliza wouldn't go to prison. She insisted it was love, a mother's duty, but the cold precision with which she acted told a different story. One of obsession, control, and a delusion so deep it became lethal. The investigators were horrified. They expected a woman broken by guilt, not one calmly explaining years of calculated violence. Lydia had gone from protector to captor, from mother to murderer. Her confession closed the case, but it opened a deeper question. How far can love go before it becomes something far more dangerous? Lydia Harper's trial became one of the most followed criminal cases in the country. News outlets flooded the small town of Franklin, Tennessee, digging up every scrap of Lydia's once sterling past. Former students, neighbors, and colleagues lined up to express disbelief. The kind counselor who had guided countless teens was now accused of multiple murders and the long-term imprisonment of her own daughter. Courtroom sketches showed a woman still composed, her grey-streaked hair pulled back neatly, her face expressionless as charges were read. There were no outbursts, no apologies, just the quiet presence of a woman who had spent years hiding behind silence. The prosecution built its case with devastating clarity. 3 confirmed victims, each tied to Lydia through circumstantial evidence and her own confession. They introduced footage from the neighbor's security camera, forensics from the basement, and expert testimony about the psychological torment Eliza endured. The most powerful evidence came from Eliza herself. Though frail and soft-spoken, her testimony was clear. She described the slow erosion of her freedom, how her mother began isolating her with excuses, then locks, then lies. She told the court how Lydia controlled her food, her access to light, and her understanding of time. Days blurred, hope vanished. Eliza also spoke about the night of the college party, the incident that changed everything. She said she remembered arguing, remembered the fall, and remembered running. But what haunted her most wasn't the accident. It was the way her mother refused to let her take responsibility. She had begged to confess in the early days, but Lydia wouldn't allow it. Over time, Eliza became more prisoner than daughter. She admitted to hearing things from the basement. A scuffle, a thud, silence. Though she never saw the victims, she knew her mother was doing terrible things to keep her secret buried. The defense tried to paint Lydia as a tragic figure, someone who had lost her husband, struggled as a single parent, and cracked under pressure. They argued that her decisions, while misguided, came from a place of fear and love. But the jury wasn't swayed. The evidence was too overwhelming, the deaths too deliberate. Lydia had planned, acted, and killed. She had manipulated those around her and sacrificed innocent lives for the illusion of control. What the court saw wasn't love, it was obsession. Lydia Harper was found guilty on all counts: 3 murders, unlawful imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. As she was led from the courtroom, she looked back once at Eliza. Her face showed no remorse, just a faint, chilling smile, as if she still believed she had done the right thing. Eliza, now in her mid-20s, began her own legal journey. Though she wasn't charged with murder, she pled guilty to obstruction and received a reduced sentence, spending several years in a treatment-focused facility. She later changed her name and moved out of state, trying to rebuild a life that had been stolen from her. In the end, Lydia's legacy was not that of a loving mother, but of a woman who destroyed everything to protect a lie. She sacrificed her career, her reputation, and 3 innocent lives, all to hide one dark secret.